If you did find a broken part or a defective part in your 30,000 pieces of house, you simply contacted Sears and they would send you a new part. You didn't have to return the part or supply any evidence that it truly was damaged. They were very good about that. And what's even more amazing, of the many people I've interviewed who actually built a Sears kit home, very few ever found a missing part. Can you imagine inventorying 30,000 pieces of house and not missing anything? Or shipping it 1,000 miles or more and not having anything break?
You could even see on this curve, right here on the curve, how the tile, every detail, how they made a curve and they knew to order that piece.
Quality materials at affordable prices allowed residents to build their first homes. They put much thought, time, and energy into creating their own home, while adding to the architectural character of a community. They are usually more charming than any other house on the block.
Sears sold fewer than 75,000 of these kit homes in all 48 states. In Washington, D.C., about 1 out of 3 Sears homes have already been destroyed, partly because the price of real estate is so high. And they do what's called a tear down, where they buy a cheap house and tear it down for the land value. So in Washington, D.C., about 1 out of 3 Sears homes are already gone. In other metropolitan areas, that number could be that high. So it is time to start identifying them for the purpose of protecting them.
When you put a limestone cap on it, it gives it a nice appeal. So what happens is the water in the higher elevation hits the wall, drains down through the stone into the pipe and drains out through a hole at the side of the wall, and that stops any hydraulic action from pushing the wall out.
A country manor retaining wall is a very good choice for older homes. It has that old antique look to it.
We've put nice, small, elegant landscaping in front of it. Smaller bushes, incorporate that into the landscape, and then we put a simple bushes like Ilex compacta, hydrangea, daylilies. What we done was we modernized the old landscape by introducing new retaining walls, new stepping system. We regraded, re-topsoiled, ripped out the old landscaping and put in brand new landscaping. Add a little bit of flower, maybe a snow fountain cherry like we have in the center of the yard over there, gives some nice blossom in the springtime. And basically then it gives you all your coverage, so when everything dies off you still have nice green backdrop against your house. We have one.
The other thing was that housing was becoming increasingly complicated with plumbing, electrical systems, and fancier heating systems. And it was becoming a little more difficult for the average do-it-yourselfer to just get a house and build it himself. It required specialties of contractors and subcontractors. I think my favorite part about Sears homes is it's just such an amalgamation of American history, intertwined with the history of immigrants coming to the country with fresh hopes, intertwined with the history of architecture, with merchandising history. It's just really the convergence of so many fascinating, uniquely American elements of our history. And it's a wonderful time in our history. I mean, the Little House on the Prairie books, Laura Ingalls Wilder talks about life on the prairie in the 1870s and 1880s. She talks about living in a soddy, which was a house made of dirt bricks. She talks about grass growing on the roof. When it rained, mud would leak into her house. She talks about life in a very primitive cabin where it was so cold she'd wake up and find frost on her comforter. To go from that in the 1870s and 1880s to a home with a central heating system, indoor plumbing, electricity in 1908, that's a fantastically fast evolution of housing in the span of 3 decades, less than a lifetime. So I find that fascinating. In fact, as late as 1917, American carpenter and builder was suggesting that a house with weather-tight walls was a plus. That was 1917. So American housing went through this fascinating and very rapid evolution at that time. And that's another favorite element, is just watching the growth of how, we all expect to have primitive housing or basic housing. And what we consider primitive basic housing today would have been a luxury mansion in the early 1900s. So I guess my favorite elements are just all the uniquely American aspects of somebody picking up 30,000 pieces of house at the depot and turning it into a home of their own. And then it was a home, so many of these elderly people have come to my lectures, and they still get a tear in their eye as they talk about building the house or watching Dad build the house, or how Dad made a game of reading off a part number on the blueprint and said the kids scampering to find the piece of lumber that was marked A117. People put their hearts and souls into these houses, and they still love them, and yet so few people have even heard of Sears kit homes today. And they're at imminent risk of destruction. As I mentioned, in some of the higher priced communities, these houses are being torn down at an alarming rate. So, and also I guess it's the preservationist in me. They are simple houses. They're the working man's houses, the middle class houses, the immigrants' houses. They need to be preserved and protected. So it's, I guess, a part of the underdog in me loves it's hidden treasure. That's another element. Finding these houses and knocking on the door and talking to the homeowner and saying, did you know this house came out of a kit? It came out of the Sears Roebuck catalog. It came in all these pieces and somebody put it together with a 75-page instruction book. And invariably, these people write me back 2 weeks or 2 months later to say, I can't stop learning about this. This is fascinating. You've opened my eyes. You've changed the way I think about this house. And I've been in communities like East St. Louis, which is considered one of the most depressed communities in this country. And I've talked to homeowners there. And you see these homeowners who've had nothing but bad news for the last 3 or 4 decades get a little glint in their eyes. They hear that their home is special. And they have pride of ownership. And it's amazing how something so seemingly insignificant can be so important.
Current home buyers, architectural historians, and enthusiasts of American culture indicate that thousands of these houses survive in varying degrees of condition and original appearance.